She sets the dessert plate down, and her hand stays at the table's edge, and I am looking at the plate and not speaking, which means I have already given myself away. Something tightens in the forward part of my throat. Not a swallow, not a reaction I can name cleanly. And I do not look up because the moment I look up, she will see that I recognized it before I tasted it, that the scent alone was enough. That bergamot in a room does something specific to the cartilage behind my sternum and has since the morning I was 26 and making decisions I told myself were professional. She is moving, not away. The chair beside me, not across the table, which is where a chef returning a plate to a guest would go, which is where any reasonable professional geometry places the person who cooked the food. The chair beside me, close enough that the heat from her chef's coat arrives before she does. Close enough that her mouth, when she speaks, is at the level of my temple. Her voice is the quietest thing in the room. You recognized it. The bergamot, you made a sound and then you stopped making it and pretended you hadn't. Not a question. If you want to hear uncensored too hot for YouTube stories, check out my Patreon in the description. Tell us where you're watching from and subscribe. 10 years earlier, I was a different configuration of the same person in a city I had moved to for a reason I understood structurally. A position with a metropolitan planning authority doing transit corridor work that needed someone who could read density modeling and still speak to a city council without making them feel reduced. And I was good at the work, and I knew it, which is different from being arrogant about it. Arrogance requires the performance of certainty. What I had was the quieter thing. I understood the work, and the work was enough, and most nights that was sufficient. Most nights. Not the Thursday in October when I was 26, and the restaurant where the team had gone after a late presentation was the kind of place that had ambitions, that understood what it was trying to be, that had a kitchen that felt like a statement. I had noticed the food in the way I noticed structural decisions in buildings. Not aesthetically, not immediately, but with the delayed recognition that something has been thought through at a level most things aren't. The saffron in the second course had not been decorative. The acid balance in the third had been deliberate, in a way that suggested someone in that kitchen had a specific conviction about restraint. I had not expected to meet the conviction outside afterward. She had been at the back exit when I went out for air. 28 maybe, chef's whites already off and folded over one arm, a cigarette unlit in one hand. I had one unlit also, which I had been carrying for 2 weeks without smoking, because I had stopped smoking but hadn't yet stopped carrying them, which is a category of denial I can describe without judgment from the inside. She had looked at me. I had looked at her. We had both noted the unlit cigarettes, and neither of us had said anything about them for approximately 40 seconds, at which point she had said, "The kitchen is a non-smoking environment," which was the most oblique and least useful observation available at that moment, and which had made me laugh. Involuntarily, in the specific way that surprises you. The conversation had lasted until the city went pale at the edges. I did not remember all of it. I remembered the quality of it, the density, the way she spoke about food as architecture, as a form of structural argument, which was not a framework I had heard before, and which mapped, with a precision that unsettled me, onto everything I already believed about cities. I remembered that she had asked me once, around 3 a.m, why I thought people ate together rather than alone when the caloric requirement was identical either way, and I had said something about witness, that eating together was about the presence of a witness to the experience of nourishment, that the company was not incidental but definitional, and she had gone quiet for a long time and then said, "I've been trying to understand why I cook, and that's the closest anyone has gotten." I had taken the 6 a.m. train. The reason I told myself was the presentation follow-up at 9, which was real, which did require my presence, which was not a fabricated professional obligation. The reason I did not examine was the alternative, which was to not take the 6 a.m. train, which was a choice whose implications I understood well enough to take the train. I had heard, in the years between, scattered references. Cass had left the restaurant 6 months after I left the city. She had spent 2 years in France. She had opened a place of her own in this city 4 years ago, with a philosophy that had been described in various reviews as rigorous, intentional, personal. I had moved to this city 3 years after she did, for different reasons: a senior position with the Metropolitan Planning Commission, the kind of work that makes a decade of corridor and density modeling feel like it was pointing at something. And I had not known she was here until the review. The review, which I had read on a Tuesday evening in my apartment with a glass of wine I had poured without thinking, which had described the chef's approach as cooks as though the guest is the only consideration. Not the room, not the occasion, not the accolade. The guest. as though being fed by her is a private matter between two people, regardless of who else is present. I had read that sentence and felt something structural shift in a part of myself I keep well maintained and properly filed. I had made the reservation the following morning. I had not used my last name. I had written my first name, Vera, in my own handwriting on the reservation card, which is the restaurant's system. A small card rather than a digital log, an intentional archaism that the review had also mentioned, and which I had read as a deliberate statement about permanence, about the record of a meal as a different category of document than a booking confirmation. I had thought, writing it, that she might not connect the name. I had thought this as a sentence I was composing in the active voice, and then immediately understood I was composing it to avoid examining its passive voice counterpart. I had known when Cass brought the plate herself. She had not come out of the kitchen during the meal. I had tracked this without deciding to track it through the pass-through, which from the private dining room was visible at a particular angle. A warm rectangle of stainless steel and moving figures, a controlled brightness in the room's candlelit periphery. The courses had arrived through the service team. Correct, precise, perfectly timed. The wine pairings had been explained with a specificity that told me someone in the kitchen had thought about this meal, this particular progression, for longer than the duration of service. The dessert arrived without the team. Cass had carried the plate from the kitchen herself. She had set it on the table with the specific care of someone who has made this thing with an intention that exceeds its category. And then her hand had remained at the table's edge for a beat that had no professional necessity. And I had looked at the plate and understood before I tasted it, from the scent alone. Bergamot and something floral underneath it. A citrus so specific it is not really a flavor but a location. And my throat had tightened with a sound that I had stopped after half a second. She had heard the half second. Now she is in the chair beside me, and her chef's coat has been open at the collar since the last seating, long undone, the dark fabric fallen open to reveal an edge of black silk at her sternum. And her mouth is at my temple, and her hand is at the back of my chair, 1 inch from my shoulder, not touching, present. The single candle between us and the kitchen, dark through the pass-through, and the restaurant silent in its late-night way. Not the silence of emptiness, but the silence of a space that has been full and is now considering what it held. I look at the dessert plate. A bergamot tart. Shallow, precise. The glazed surface catching the candle in a way that tells me the glaze was applied while it was still warm, which requires timing, which means this was made during service with the service schedule already running, which means someone made a calculation about when to begin. I do not say, "How long have you known?" I know the answer. She is waiting. She is very good at waiting. I already knew this about her, and I had filed it, 10 years ago, under things that are noted without being developed, which is a filing system I maintain with discipline and occasional complete failure. The bergamot, she says, still quiet, and she is not repeating herself, she is continuing, is from a specific source. The producer is on the Calabrian coast. I've used it for 3 years. No one has made that sound before. I pick up the fork. I taste the tart. The bergamot opens on the back of my palate, and behind it, underneath the floral and the restrained sweetness, is a ghost of a morning that has no culinary analog. The specific quality of early light on limestone. The smell of a city that keeps its history at street level where you can see it. A 6 a.m. platform with a train already making its intention known in the quality of the air. My throat moves. I do not stop it this time. "You know which city?" I say. Cass says nothing. She is looking at the plate also. Her profile in the candlelight is the same profile I have been carrying as a data point for 10 years, which is not how I intend to think about it, but is what it is. The clean line from jaw to temple. The dark hair coming fully undone from its braid now. Strands loose at her jaw and neck. 12 hours of kitchen work rendered in the specific dishevelment that tells you a person has been building something all day and it has cost them. "The tart isn't on your menu," I say. "No. I looked at the menu before I came." "I know." She turns her head finally and looks at me directly. "You looked at it 3 times. The reservation inquiry included a menu request." "That's attentive record keeping." "It's attentive." A pause. Not a social pause, the other kind, the kind with weight. "I've been attentive about this reservation for 3 weeks. The candle shifts. a small current somewhere, the ventilation perhaps completing a cycle, the restaurant systems winding down toward their night state. The shadow of Vera's wine glass moves across the white linen and settles. I have not touched the wine in an hour. I notice this. I file it under evidence. The kitchen ventilation, which has been a constant presence, a low hum at the frequency of ongoing work, the sound of a kitchen that is operational, produces a descending tone and then releases it. Gone. And then the restaurant is quiet, in a way it has not been in 12 hours, a structural quiet, the building's breath held. I hear the candle. I hear Cass's chef's coat when she shifts, the double-breasted weight of it, the dark fabric warm with 12 hours of standing at heat, a warmth that exists in the space between us as something I have been registering without naming. Kitchen warmth. The residue of made things. I set the fork down. You know what I find interesting, I say, not as a question because the frame of a question would give me an exit I don't intend to take. Tell me. The phrase in the review, the one that made me make the reservation. It said you cook as though the guest is the only consideration. I look at the plate. That isn't a restaurant philosophy. That's a personal one. Those aren't different things, Cass says. Not for me. No, I worked that out. I turn my head and she is closer than the chair arrangement technically necessitates, which is information I am processing carefully. The menu is designed the way good transit corridors are designed. It gets you somewhere. You don't feel the planning because the planning disappears into the experience. The corner of Cass's mouth moves. Not quite a smile. The preparation for one, the structural element before the decision. You're going to explain my cooking to me in terms of infrastructure. You explained your cooking to me in terms of architecture at 3 a.m. in October 10 years ago, and I thought it was the most accurate thing anyone had said about anything in my presence. Silence. The candle adjusts. A small sound, the wick, the wax. I remember the conversation, Cass says. She says it flatly, without the qualifier of emotions she does not appear to perform. I remember most of it. Most of it. The infrastructure metaphor is new. I've had 10 years to develop it. She reaches, without looking away from me, across the table toward the reservation card in its holder. The small ivory card, my first name in my own handwriting, the card that has been in that holder since I arrived and which I have been aware of with a peripheral specificity that is disproportionate to its size. She picks it up. She holds it for a moment, just holds it, looking at it, the candlelight catching the ink of my handwriting. And then she sets it face down on the linen. Not in the holder. The gesture is small. It is not small. You only gave us a first name, she says. Yes. You knew I'd recognize it. I look at her. I thought you might. Vera. She says my name in the same tone she used to describe the reservation. Flat, direct, without the social softening that most people add to names as a form of protective distance. You made a reservation at my restaurant. You ate the entire menu without identifying yourself any further than a first name. You recognized a bergamot tart that I made from a flavor specific enough to function as an address. She pauses. And you're still here at midnight. The food was excellent. The corner of her mouth. The preparation. The kitchen closed 2 hours ago. The service was also very good. Vera. And there it is. The way she says my name the second time has a different register than the first, a register I can locate at the back of my jaw where the tension has been building since she sat in this chair. A register that is direct and undecorated and completely specific in its intention. She does not soften it. She does not dress it in the social grammar that most people use to give both parties an exit. She means the name the way she means everything I have watched her mean tonight. Precisely. I look at the dessert plate. The bergamot tart, half finished, the glaze still intact on the uncut portion. The candle sends a small ribbon of warmth across the plate's ceramic edge, and the color of the glaze is the color of something I stopped looking at 10 years ago by taking a train. I look back at her. The food was the pretext, I say. Obviously. Obviously, she says. Not unkindly. Not like she's conceding a point, like she has been waiting for this particular sentence and is acknowledging its arrival. She looks at me with the steadiness that has been the governing quality of her presence all evening. Through the courses, through the service, through the moment she set down the plate and remained. Steady, direct, present in the specific way of a person who has made a decision about being in a room and is fulfilling it. I read the review 3 weeks ago. I say. I recognize the description. I know you did. You knew I was coming for 3 weeks. Yes. And you made that. I look at the plate. Specifically. Without putting it on the menu. Yes. I say, that's not attentive record keeping. No, Cass says. It isn't. The last staff member, I have registered their presence peripherally, the sound of the kitchen's final movement, the specific quiet footstep and door sequence of a space being properly closed, moves through the kitchen behind the pass-through, and I hear, without seeing, the pass-through close. A small sound, a latch, and then the warm rectangle of kitchen light disappears, and the only light in the room is the candle. The room changes, not dramatically, not in any way I could write in a planning report or describe in structural terms. But the room closes, the dining room that has been a semi-public space all evening, a space with permeability, a space connected to the working kitchen becomes a sealed space, a private space, a room with only 2 people in it at whatever time it now is past midnight. I hear the candle. I hear the sound the candle's wax makes when it settles. A small creak, barely a sound at all, the wick adjusting. I hear it because the room is quiet enough to contain it. I hear Cass breathe. She's close enough that I hear this. Not loudly, not dramatically, just, I am near enough to another person that their breath is in my range, which is a proximity category that has its own name and its own particular effect on the inside of my sternum. The warmth from her chef's coat is a continuous presence. 12 hours of kitchen, of standing at heat, of tasting, adjusting, directing, building each course from its beginning to the moment it left the pass-through, held in the dark, double-breasted fabric and given off now in this sealed room as something I keep registering in the 2 inches between her arm and mine. I look at the wine glass, half full, untouched for more than an hour. The candle's shadow on the glass has been moving in slow arcs across the linen as the flame adjusts, and I have been watching this, I realize, with a focus that is disproportionate, tracking the movement of a shadow as a way of not tracking what is actually happening in this room, which is the approach I take to most things I have not yet decided what to do with. Cass picks up the reservation card from where she set it face down on the linen. She looks at it. My name in my handwriting, which in the candlelight is ink on ivory. No surname, no phone number, just Vera, and the date, and the time. She looks at it long enough that I become aware she is looking at it. Then she sets it face down again, this time under the edge of the dessert plate, tucked under it, the corner disappearing beneath the ceramic, which is not where a reservation card goes. A reservation card goes in the holder or in the file, not under a dessert plate made specifically for the name written on it. I watch her do this. I understand, watching her do it, that this is a statement she is making in the language of objects rather than words, which is consistent with everything I have understood about her tonight. That her primary vocabulary is things, the dish, the flavor, the card, the chair beside, rather than across. She speaks in decisions, she speaks in where she puts things. The bergamot tart, I say. Yes. It was made from a specific source. Calabrian, you said? Yes. The city. I look at the plate, I look at the half-eaten tart and the bergamot scent that is still present in the sealed room, warm and citrus floral and geographic. The smell of a specific morning in a specific city, rising now in the candlelight like something that has been waiting. It tastes like the city. Yes, Cass says. Not like a restaurant in the city, like the city itself. The level of it, the way the streets hold the morning air, the limestone. I pause. You made it taste like the train platform. Something in Cass's profile shifts. Not large. The kind of shift that requires you to have been watching someone carefully enough to notice the baseline. The controlled composure of 12 hours of professional performance, the steady professional surface, and then to notice a departure from it. Her jaw. Something in the set of her jaw at the moment I said train platform. She knows the platform, I mean. I've been refining the recipe for 2 years, she says, getting the ratio right. 2 years, not 3, not 4. 2. 2 years after I moved to this city. I file this and do not comment on it. Why the bergamot specifically, I say? Not quite a question. The grammar of someone pulling a thread. Cass turns her head and looks at me. The candlelight is at her profile angle, the clean line from jaw to temple, the loose strands of dark hair at her jaw and neck, the open collar of her chef's coat, and the black silk visible beneath it at her sternum. She is looking at me with the same directness she has held all evening, but there is something in it now that has crossed a threshold. The look of someone who has decided that the performance of composure is no longer the primary obligation. She says, "You smell like bergamot. You have since I met you. I don't know if it's intentional or natural or something you've just always carried. I noticed it on the platform that morning and I've been noticing it since." The inside of my throat does something I cannot account for. "That's," I say, and stop. "Yes," she says. "You've been noticing it since. For 3 weeks, since the reservation logged." She looks at the dessert plate. "The review. The phrase that made you make the reservation. I wrote it in an interview and then regretted it almost immediately because it was the most private thing I'd ever said publicly about what I do and why I do it. I wrote it thinking about a specific person. The candle, the wax, the small sound of a wick adjusting, the bergamot scent in the sealed room. I wrote it," Cass says, "about what it felt like to cook for someone when you're completely aware of them, not performing awareness, actually having it, the way you have it about the things that matter to you." She pauses. "I wrote it about a conversation at 3 a.m. about witness." I sit with this for a moment. I sit with it the way I sit with a planning constraint that has implications I need to think through before I speak. Not because I don't know what it means, but because what it means deserves more than my first sentence. "The review was published 4 months ago," I say. "Yes." "You wrote the interview 8 months ago." "Yes." "Which was approximately 3 years after I moved to this city." She doesn't answer. She doesn't need to. The sequence is its own answer. I say, "Cass." She looks at me. "You didn't know I was in this city until 3 weeks ago." "No. But you were—" I stop. The way I stop when I reach a sentence I have been building toward and then need a second with before I say it. "You were still thinking about the conversation." "I was still thinking about the person," she says, not correcting me, just being precise, which is what she does with everything. The room is very quiet. The candle is the only sound, and then it isn't. There is something else, the specific quality of 2 people in a sealed room at midnight with everything said and nothing yet done, which is its own kind of sound, a sound that registers in the chest before the ears. I look at the dessert plate. The bergamot tart with its corner tucked under the reservation card. No, the other way. The reservation card under the plate. Vera's name in Vera's handwriting, disappearing beneath the ceramic of a dish made from a memory. And the scent of it in the closed room is warmer now. Accumulated, the way a room's smell builds when the windows are shut, and it is bergamot and kitchen warmth and the specific quality of Cass's presence at my right side, which I can describe as cedar adjacent, something clean and mineral, the smell of someone who works with heat and precision, and it has been in my range all evening, and I have been filing it as background, context, olfactory data. It is not background. "Finish the tart," Cass says. I look at her. "Finish it," she says again, quietly. "Take the thing I made for you." There is something in the phrase, "take the thing I made for you," that lands in a specific location in my ribcage to the left of center. Not a metaphorical location, but a precise one. The place where I register things I am not going to be able to file incorrectly for much longer. I take a bite. Bergamot, the Calabrian source, the morning quality of it, the limestone and early light encoded in a flavor by someone who has spent 2 years refining the ratio. It opens on the back of my palate and I close my eyes for half a second, and when I open them, Cass is looking at me with an expression that is the most unguarded thing I have seen on her face tonight. Not exposed, not vulnerable in the performing sense, but present in the way that someone is present when they have stopped managing their face. "Tell me what city you think I was making it from," she says. She knows. I know she knows. This is not a question about information. The scent of the tart rises between us, bergamot and something floral, warm in the sealed room, geographic in the specific way that some flavors are not flavors but addresses. And at the same moment, I become aware of the candle on the table between us and behind it, and Cass's profile against the dark of the closed pass-through, and the particular quality of quiet that exists in this room right now. A quiet with weight, a silence with shape, the specific density of air between 2 people who have said the important things and are waiting. My blouse has shifted at the shoulder. The silk, deep forest green has slipped where I have been turned toward Cass for— "How long now?" "An hour." The blush lace of the bralette visible at my shoulder, which I am aware of in the same distal way I am aware of Cass's open collar and the black silk at her sternum. And the candle makes no distinction between these things. It lights them with the same amber, the same warmth, the same quality of illumination that makes a private room feel like the only room. Cass is at my side and slightly behind my right shoulder. We have both been looking at the dessert plate and the candle. The geometry of it, 2 people and a table and a single light between them and the dark kitchen behind, is the geometry of a conversation that has become something else, without either of them announcing the transition. I can hear the candle settle, I can hear her breathe. The bergamot still, in the room's warm air. It tastes like a city, I say. Which city? Cass says. You know which city. I want you to say it. I turn my head. She's right there, closer than the chair arrangement explains, closer than 12 hours of professional competence explains. The dark hair loose at her jaw and neck, and the open collar, and the black silk, and the 12 hours of kitchen warmth radiating from the double-breasted fabric, and her eyes are level with mine, and the expression on her face is the most undeflected thing I have seen in this restaurant tonight. She wants me to say it. Not because she doesn't know. Because she wants to hear me say the city aloud, which is the same as, she wants to hear me admit what we are both doing here. I say the city. Its name in the room at midnight, the name of a city in another country, a city with limestone at street level and early light that does the specific thing that early light does in the Mediterranean. A city I left at 6 a.m. 10 years ago from a train platform where I was carrying an unlit cigarette and a professional reason that was real and inadequate. Lands in the sealed private dining room and does not immediately resolve into anything. Cass is still. The kind of still that is not absence of movement but the precise management of it. I've been looking at your reservation card for 3 weeks, she says. I've been building a menu for 3 weeks. I started the bergamot recipe again from the beginning 3 weeks ago. She pauses. The pause has texture. I didn't have a professional reason. I had your name in your handwriting and the description of someone who reads menus before she arrives at restaurants. I am looking at her profile. The jaw, the loose hair, the open collar. And I have been, she says, in this kitchen for 12 hours, and you have been in this room for 4, and the staff have gone home and the kitchen is closed, and she stops. She stops in the middle of a sentence she knows how to finish. I watch her stop. And, I say, and you're still here, she says. I'm still here. Why? You know why? I want you to say that too. The silence, the candle, the bergamot in the warm air, the reservation card under the dessert plate. I say, because I took the 6 a.m. train 10 years ago, and I have been thinking about that choice with a frequency that is inconsistent with it having been a correct decision. Cass exhales, a small sound, not large, not performed, but a real one. The sound of a breath held, and then not. She turns her head and looks at me fully, and I look at her. And the candle is between us, and the room is very small and very quiet and very specifically itself. Then she does something I have not anticipated, which is, she stands. She stands from the chair beside me and moves to the end of the table. Not across, but to the table's corner, the end, the place where the geometry shifts. And she crouches there, at the arm of my chair, which puts her face at the level of my forearm, looking up at me. It is an extraordinary repositioning. She's below my eye level. Cass, who has been the organizing principle of this room all evening, the person around whom the space has arranged itself, the person whose presence made the kitchen staff move with a particular quality of attention, the person whose chef's coat and straight dark hair and controlled composure have been the architectural feature this room has been organized around, is crouching at the arm of my chair and looking up at me. And this inversion of the geometry does something to the inside of my chest that I do not have a planning term for. She is looking up at me, her face at the level of my forearm, her eyes level with mine if I lean slightly forward, which I find I am doing without deciding to. Say what you came for, she says, not the food. Her voice at this proximity, this angle, this nearness, this arrangement of 2 people at a table at midnight with the candle behind me and the dark kitchen behind her, is the lowest I have heard it all evening. It is not a command, and it is not a question. It is the voice of someone who has decided. My hand moves before I have finished deciding. I reach down. The movement is small, unhurried, the movement of something that has been contained for long enough that its release is not frantic but inevitable. And I set my palm against the side of Cass's jaw. Not a grasp, a placement, the flat of my hand against her face. My palm against her cheekbone and jaw, warm from the wine glass I held for an hour without drinking, warm from the room, warm from whatever has been building in me since the bergamot arrived before I could stop it. Her face is warm. Not surprising. 12 hours of kitchen, the residual heat of sustained precision. But the specific quality of the warmth surprises me anyway. Not surface warmth, but continuous warmth. The warmth of something that has been generating heat from the inside all day, and my hand against her face is receiving it. And my palm temperature and her face temperature are arriving at each other, equalizing, and neither of us moves. She exhales. The exhale arrives before she can organize it. I feel this more than hear it, the slight shift in her jaw under my palm, the microsecond of stillness that precedes the breath leaving, and then the breath itself, warm against the heel of my hand. Unheld, unconcealed, completely real. Her eyes close for 1 second. Then they open, and the expression on her face, the composure that has governed everything I have observed tonight, the control that is not performed but structural, not a mask but an architecture, the precision that she applies to the bergamot ratio and the menu design and the reservation card and everything else, has, in this one specific visible way, released, not collapsed, released. The distinction matters, and it is legible. She is choosing this. The exhale, the closed eyes, the face against my palm. She is choosing to receive this, which is different from losing the ability to maintain the alternative. She is allowing this, and the allowing is the most precise and consequential decision I have seen her make tonight. More precise than the bergamot, more consequential than the chair beside me rather than across. She turns her face, slightly, into my hand. A small movement. The jaw against my palm, the cheekbone turning a degree toward the pressure of my hand, the quality of someone leaning into warmth. I sit with my hand against her face, and the candle behind me, and the bergamot in the room, and the reservation card under the dessert plate, and the name of a city I said aloud, still present in the air. I came for you, I say. Obviously. Obviously, she says. The same word she used an hour ago. Not an echo, a return. The word chosen specifically because it is the same word and now means something accumulated and complete. She stands. She does not take my hand from her face. My hand travels with her, stays where it has been placed until she is standing, and my arm is raised to her jaw level, and then finally, my hand falls. The contact ends. The specific warmth of her jaw against my palm remains in my palm for a moment, the temperature differential equalizing and then gone. And the absence is precise, anatomical, a specific location of skin aware of itself. She looks down at me. The kitchen note, she says. It is not a complete sentence. She's telling me something she's in the process of deciding. The kitchen note, I say. I wrote it 3 weeks ago, when the reservation logged. She pauses. I've been revising the quantities. I look up at her. Her face in the candlelight, the controlled composure, partially reassembled and partially not, the jaw and the loose hair and the open collar, the black silk at her sternum, is the face of someone who has been precise about everything all evening and is being precise about this. Where is it? I say. In your coat pocket. Your coat is at the cloakroom. I look at her for a long moment. You put it there during service. During the second course, she says, which I thought gave us approximately 3 hours. 3 hours. 3 hours ago, she had already placed the note. I sit with this. I sit with the understanding that the entire evening, the courses, the service, the bergamot tart, the chair beside rather than across, the reservation card face down on the linen, the face down card under the dessert plate, has been a meal made for me specifically, not as performance, but as statement, a statement built over 3 weeks and executed over 12 hours and placed in my coat pocket 3 hours before we arrived at this conversation. The candle settles, the wax, the small sound, the bergamot in the room. What does it say? I say. It has the recipe, she says. The bergamot tart, ingredients and ratios in kitchen shorthand. She pauses. And the city, the name of it, and beneath that, a day and a time. I look up at her. Which day? Monday, she says. The restaurant is closed on Monday. The room is very quiet. The candle is the room's entire light. The reservation card is under the dessert plate, Vera in Vera's handwriting, going to the kitchen rather than the file, and the bergamot scent is in the closed air of the private dining room, warm and geographic and accumulated. The smell of a city and a morning and a 6 a.m. train, and a decision I have been examining at intervals for 10 years, and am now, at whatever past midnight this is, in the process of revising. I stand. I am standing, and Cass is standing, and we are beside the table. And the candle is between us, not between us, beside us now, the light source at the table's center as we have moved to the table's end. And I am looking at her, and she is looking at me, and I say, Monday. Monday, she says. Not a question, not a negotiation. A confirmation in the specific register she uses for everything she has decided. Flat, direct, precise, meaning exactly what it says without performance or decoration. I look at her for a long moment. The bergamot, the candle, the dark kitchen behind the closed pass-through, still warm, still present, still the source of everything that has been between us tonight. Then I say, I should go. Yes, she says. Neither of us moves. The moment extends. The candle holds. The scent of the bergamot tart, still present in the sealed room, still geographic, still precise in the way Cass is precise about everything, moves in the warm air between us, and neither woman moves. And the room holds both of us in it for a beat that is not comfortable, and is not uncomfortable, but is simply true. Two people standing at the end of a table at past midnight in a sealed room that is the size of everything that has been between them for 10 years. Then I go. The coat is at the cloakroom. The cloakroom is at the restaurant's entry. I take my coat from the hook, and I put it on, and I push my hands into the pockets, and in the left pocket, folded once, is a small card. Not a restaurant card, not a menu card, a kitchen note card, the kind kept at the expediting station for last-minute modifications. I unfold it. Bergamot tart. The recipe in Cass's handwriting, compressed, professional, the shorthand of someone who writes for themselves rather than a reader. Ingredients in grams, ratios in fractions, the Calabrian source noted by producer name. At the bottom of the card, a space, and then the name of the city. Beneath it, the name of the city in exactly the handwriting that has been precise and unsentimental about everything all evening. The ingredients, the ratios, the professional notations. The name of the city, written plainly without decoration, as a fact. Beneath the city, Monday, 11 a.m. I stand in the restaurant's entry with the kitchen note in my hand and the coat on and the cold of the outside air beginning to register through the door, and I look at the card for a moment. The bergamot scent is gone from the air out here. Or it isn't gone. I am carrying it, in the coat fabric, in my hair, in the specific thermal memory of a palm that has been against a warm jaw and still knows the temperature. I put the card back in my pocket. I push through the door. Outside, the city is doing what cities do past midnight on a Thursday, settling into itself, the streets not empty but thinned, the particular quality of urban air that has been through a full day and is now in the process of becoming a new one. I walk for a moment before I find a cab, and in the cab I have the card in my pocket and the bergamot somewhere in my coat and the memory of a jaw against my palm and the temperature of it, still present, still specific, still registering in the heel of my hand with the precise and particular quality of something I have no further plans to file incorrectly. Monday, 11 a.m. The city, outside the cab windows, is the same city it has always been. The same streets, the same density, the same transit corridors I have spent 3 years designing from the inside. And it looks, at this hour, at this particular angle, exactly the same as it always does, and not at all the same. Not at all.